Yeah, baby. All right, so check it out. At this point, we've gone over where you live, like regionally in the States for your grow zone. We got the cool season zone, we got the transition zone, and we have the warm season zone. Then we went and we walked you through the basics as far as like what you need to understand on the soil test. That's going to be your pH. We know how important the pH is when it comes to nutrient availability and being able to like pull those resources out of the soil. Then we learned about the macronutrients and its relation to the MLSN. And then we went over to cation exchange capacity, CECs. That's when Mr. Russell Taylor broke down his beautiful analogy with both the cupboard and the particle size. And if you're lost, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go back and check out those videos, man. These are building blocks. I'm going to keep saying that because as you learn this information, as you get the lingo, you and I will be on one accord. And that's how we want it. All right, let's get it. So now we're here, as promised, in the first video, that I would give you some tips and tricks on how to figure out what grass type you actually have. And I pretty much already gave you the cheat code in that first video. But now I'm going to give you the assets, the tools to better prepare you to actually know with at least like an 80 or 90% assertion that this is the grass type you have or it's the one you want to go with. So let's start with this first. I know you keep hearing me say it, but I'm just going to hammer it in for you because it's a free resource that's not being leveraged today. And that's your extension office. The easiest thing for you to do is actually just like take a sample of that grass and then go to the extension office and say, hey, what kind of grass is this? And they'll let you know. Now there's some variables, right? Like, so if you just moved into a new build home, these new constructions that they're throwing up left and right, you may have a particular sodded version in the front, and then in the back, due to money and budget, as we know, that's how this world works, you most likely have some type of contractor's blend, which means it's a mix of a whole bunch of nasty stuff that you probably just want to get rid of entirely. But that's okay. They'll give you a good idea, comparing that with the region you live in and what makes the most sense. So we're in warm season land. We know what makes the most sense is a warm season grass. Now, if you're during your winter in the warm season and you see a lot of green, like we talked about, like you don't see that brown bronze haze that I showed you, and now it looks more like the green portion, well, it's a possibility that you walked into a home that actually has a cool season grass. Those chances and odds are very low, but nevertheless, it's possible. Moving forward, if you're in the transition zone, we know, it's a flip of a coin. But I gave you some good telltale signs as to how to point that out as well in the last video. When it comes to dormancy during the summer or dormancy during the winter. Give you some really good ideas. But you should at least know what you're looking for based off that video. And then finally, if you're up north, well, we know that we're looking at cool season grasses. So take those samples, go to the extension office, and they will point you in the right direction. Well, if you don't want to leave home, there's some other options. Technology has brought us pretty far. And there's these two apps. One's called Nature ID, and then the other one's called like Plant ID. I'll throw them up here on the screen, and I'll link them in the description below. I'm 90% confident that they're available both in Android and the Google Store. Both apps are free, however, they will make you think you need to pay for it. So just look for like the little transparent X in the corner because they'll try to like get you to subscribe and pay, and you don't need to do that. Completely free. The trick with this though is you have to take good pictures. You have to frame the pictures. You have to get them up close. You have to get them up far. I think they usually want you to take 3 or 4 different pictures. And you want to do this multiple times throughout your yard because you could be in a situation where you're in the cool season area and you have a blend of a grass, or you're in the transition zone and you have a blend of a grass. Typically, you don't see a blend of a grass on purpose in the South, but these things are purposely done in the transition zone, in the cool season zone, which we'll talk about in the next video. So you can use these apps or you can go to the extension office. The choice is up to you. But remember, we have the foundational information to give you the ability to make some deductions of reasoning, right? So we should not be looking for cool season grass if you live in South Carolina. You just shouldn't. Your brain should already be like Bermuda. And then I'd say the final result is taking into your own hands and just getting books or comparing pictures on the internet, which I don't really recommend because sometimes those pictures are mislabeled or they're not great pictures or the cultivars are different and they'll just start skewing you in the wrong direction. Now, some bonus information for you since you hung around this long. We're going to get a little ahead of ourselves, but I figured, you're hanging in there with me, so I'll give you some extra information. I know at some point during this series, someone's going to say, well, what type of grass should I go with? I'm in the South. What do you recommend? I'm in the transition zone. What do you recommend? I'm in the cool season zone. What do you recommend? Well, here's my recommendations.
I can tell you my problems, meditating my silence. But I keep pushing my pen, rotating my stylus. Brokenness feeling like sin, now no breath, low dollar. Used to be left on red, now all the girls go holler. Now all the girls go follow. All the fake fans gon' pile up. I need peace to borrow, get that shit right back tomorrow. Somehow all the fans go bravo.
When it comes to the warm season zone, I have two recommendations that will cover pretty much every homeowner. Now, if you don't want to do anything, well, I shouldn't say anything. Now, if you want to do the minimal amount of work to your lawn and you still want it to look decent and feel good on the feet, but you don't want to have to put a whole bunch of effort into it, bearing your soil test results, I'm going to recommend to you centipede grass. Centipede grass is just a low maintenance grass. Looks pretty good, feels pretty decent on the feet, but it doesn't demand a whole bunch from you. You can have a simple 4 to 5 step program throughout the year to include a little bit of weed control, and you'll be happy with your lawn. But for the majority, I'm going to point you to Bermuda. Bermuda grass is going to be the winner, simply because its repairability and its ability to exist in acidic soil profiles for the most part. It has a good amount of tolerance to them. And it can also go with a little bit of neglect for the average person. Like if you're just not going to dedicate the necessary time that it takes to maintain that lawn to the levels that you want it to be, it's okay. And you can rotary mow this as well. I've seen it done. People will take a reel mower to it, and you always have the option to go reel mowing if you want to.
I can't stay down too long. Running from pain, running from strain, running from things, running from schemes.
The transition zone is tricky, but I'll tell you, here it is. If you want to run a warm season grass in the transition zone, you guessed it, Bermuda. I think you should go with Bermuda. It's just the easy grass. Again, its durability, its ability to thrive in the winter if you pick the right cultivars. I know Iron Cutter does pretty well. I think Tahoma 31 does pretty well. And I think either Tiff Tough or Tiff Grand, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on this, but Bermuda should be the way to go if you are looking at running a warm season grass in the transition zone. Now, if you have an affinity for cool season grasses, I got you. What you're going to want is either a straight up blend of turf type tall fescue, or you can take it up a notch and go with a blend of turf type tall fescue with Kentucky bluegrass. And the reason why is because that Kentucky bluegrass, when the temps are cooler, will knit that grass together pretty well. It has the ability to spread really well. So you blend that with some turf type tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass. You can buy those blends. You will regularly see them. And then the advantage with the turf type tall fescue, it has a really good resistance to drought and heat. And then that Kentucky bluegrass, it'll get in there and knit it all together, repair some of those bare spots for you throughout the season. Fill it in, get it nice and thick. Usually that mix is going to look like a 85 to 15 or 90 to 10 kind of mixture. That's what you're looking for. Not a lot, just a little goes a far way. And then for cool season world, if you're in the cool season, I think you should either be running perennial rye mixed with Kentucky bluegrass or a straight stand of perennial rye. The reason why is because Kentucky bluegrass by itself has so many faults. It takes a long time for it to get established, and it's just not my cup of tea. But the perennial rye mixed with the Kentucky bluegrass, you're gonna have a dark, rich color. You're gonna have some hard baller stripes, and that perennial rye is gonna grow in real fast for you. And then you still have that feature of the Kentucky bluegrass spreading and being able to self-repair to some extent. I really wouldn't go with turf type tall fescue just because the winters are pretty harsh up that way, and turf type tall fescue is going to struggle a little bit in those areas. Just from my experience and what I've seen the data say. Now, that's pretty much it. The choice is yours. Now you know how to properly identify your grass type. It's going to be important on the next step, because on the next step, we're going to talk about building a program. And that's going to matter for you to know what kind of grass you're dealing with. And it's going to matter for you to know as far as where you're at. And it's also going to matter for you to know what that soil test looks like. We're going to take all that information, build that block, and make you have the best season of your life this year in the lawn. All right, that wraps this one up. Straight to the point. Peace.